SCP is a similar event like with casters and others deal with. Those that can use magic, if you will, too. Magicians. They're using a certain electromagnetic field that sparks in tune into their balancing stream that can co-correlate through their psychic awareness depending. There are healers that can use it. There are ones that use it with magic. There are ones that use it with electromagnetic fields. There are ones that, like us, that can manipulate the electromagnetic field in frequencies like technopaths as well as the elements itself. And there is a resurgence events of being able to manually open up the inner psyche. This is real. People look it up. Healers are real. I mean, you're even going to Native American Indians that have used the healing. And like I had said from a pre-past show, where did they even get that from? They got it from the star gods. They learned that from that.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 35. Blue, how are you?
I'm good today, Mike.
Hey, what are we going to talk about today in episode 35?
Well, one of the things we will be discussing is the intergalactic summits between extraterrestrial beings and higher individuals of the elites and governments itself. When we are talking about the intergalactic summits, it deals with President Clinton in 1992, dedication of the Anu gray mix. They were a mix of an Anunnaki ancient species and gray mix statuses. They have pictures dedicating that both the president and these beings were shaking hands at this time. This is one of the many other activation events that many types of beings have activated between themselves, presidents, and other governmentals.
Wow, that's pretty scary stuff because I looked at some of the pictures you had sent, and I'm going to put those up obviously in our show here, but I don't necessarily care for any of those people. I saw a picture with an alien, so or an extraterrestrial. So please, folks, stay tuned. You're going to see some amazing stuff today. If you would, though, please, before we get going here, please go ahead and like, subscribe, and click on notifications so you're notified when we post new material. And of course, we pride ourselves on being available on just about all the major platforms. If you'd like to get your stuff somewhere special and we're not on that platform, please notify me and I'll do our best to get on there. And don't be afraid to reach out to us on the socials with questions because we do answer. Blue, let's get right into it. 35, let's go.
Grand Strategy Annex. The grand strategy annex of going into the platforms of events between intergalactic species and mankind. Internals, there have been top leaders, including President Clinton. There have been Mr. Clinton. There have been Hillary. There has been, as well as others, as including Eisenhower himself, that had intergalactic recalling codes with these types of species. One of the major species that had dedicated in pre-opsis events, and that's why, if you look more closely to these top leaders now compared to these top leaders then, you're going to notice that they don't look the same, and their activation events are symmetrically different. They have been translineated into moving and articulated some of these leaders from a positive to a negative substandard. They were reclonified and remanaged through certain reptilian species. Pre-opsis events that dealt with the Anu gray mix were more neutral, and their bystanders had to alleviate the problematic codes that were being pushed on the negative agenda at the time. So we got mix-up of species between good, bad, and the in-between that have correlated and still do correlate with leaders itself.
This is no surprise to me. I mean, I've kind of known this, but I guess I didn't want to admit it to myself that this was a real thing, and I'm glad we're talking about it here. Do these relationships, should they offer us alarm? I mean, is this a good alien with Clinton? Is this a bad alien with Clinton? Is this what's going on here?
Well, the Antigras and not just met Clinton, they meant many presidentials. They meant good presidentials. It all dealt with the Federation of subsidized for. Now, circulatory, there are other races more negative now, and that's reptids, or arcane Centauroreptids, that have seismology incubated their way in through the transactory node. These are preopsis, and they accumulated a grand strategy Annex event, that space event to simulize and strategize what can be maintained and calibrated here, because there is an unequal momentum when it deals with negative species that have wormed their way in through the programming speeds itself of the matrix. You have to understand the simology points that go into conductivity remake that this planetized grid is more of a dome effect. And it has an inner Agarthan world, and it has many different types of species, up to and uncorrelated, that were hinted agendas in many different types of movies itself.
It just, the reason I had asked what I asked, the way I asked is I'm convinced that some of these people that you've sent me pictures with, they have reptilian blood, they're reptilian, they have a reptilian connection of some sort. So it just alarms me when I see them shaking hands with another being that doesn't look reptilian. And I'm like, wow, is this, do I misunderstand? I mean, folks, this is something we talk about every show. There's good and evil in the world. There's good and evil in the universe. And sometimes all those things are together and intertwined right here on this planet. Is that right?
Well, yes and no. What needed to be obtained is preopsis. They had dealt with these species. And then there was a correlator that hit into the agenda afterward. The correlator that hit into the agenda afterward dealt with the Archdemon himself. The Archdemon, we know, fortifies the negative actuation speeds of the world war agenda, or the world agenda, the negative world agenda. Now, dealing with the corruptions that they have caused between now and then, they had saturated, especially with Heli Clinton himself. A lot of them were deprogrammed upon emission. So that means these leaders that may have been subsidized on a good withdrawal format have been polarized into something else and recloned into a modulation sort that would maintain a negative aperture. So those recloning events need to be decommissioned and possibly put back into the reality of a base status code again, and to curriculize what needs to be set, not what needs to be put back.
You know, it's crazy because I'm looking at some of the pictures you had sent me, and there's one of these extraterrestrials that looks like it. I'm gonna put this up in post. I'm gonna put a picture of Hillary Clinton up next to this being, and they look like they were separated at birth. I swear it's the same. That's her. I swear it. It's crazy. It's crazy. Wow. Is there anything I need to be alarmed with our current administration or with the current leaders we have?
Well, I mean, just the replacement models that were being calibrated among those leaders, including Biden himself, need to be decommissioned upon impasse with the way that they're neurally standing outwards, and put into effect that we need to re-maintain distribution upon this planet again. That way the real leaders can saturate and re-alleviate what they have decommissioned here, and put a processing of healing, protection, and an outlet of a sovereign nations upon the planet itself.
You know, it's crazy because folks, go back and watch 34 again after this, because we talked about Donald Trump and the SCP Foundation, and it sounds like it's like I kind of know the plot to the movie, and I'm watching the movie unfold before my eyes. It's amazing, Blue. I don't know how else to explain it to anybody, but we've been talking about these things for a while, and they're starting to happen. I'm starting to see movement here, and I'm just amazed. Am I imagining that, or am I seeing this right?
No, everything is correlated at the right timeline. When things are projected outwards, it makes the speeding waves go even a lot faster. So yes, I mean, do your homework, people. You're going to notice the in-between lateral terms of what's real and what isn't. You got to dig in deeper, though.
Speaking of the SCP Foundation, what do we have to report on the SCP Foundation this week?
Well, SCP-439, the Bone Hive. Bone Hive are articulated insects that were manually made and reconstructed in some type of generated lab under width in certain area in China. These seismology points that were calculated in certain humans only. It did not elevate onto animals. They do not affect them. They would go into the substructure of a human while it's asleep. And it will pretty much encapsulate, they will bite like normal apertures. But similar offenses as such, they would eat the person from the inside out, and they would calibrate, making a hive from the skeletal structure while the person's still alive until the actual information is deconstructed upon impasse. These insects are not widely spread out, and they are mostly and mainly confined into a secret laboratory that they keep it at in a Foundation site. There are many other types of insects out there that can cause problems for mankind. And you would think that they're alien already. They have come out at least with several, 2 or 3 to 5 different species within the past few years that have caused issues. Think about that, and think how scientists have played negative vital roles into subcontracting these. There are paranormal indexers and negative species of an unknown doctrine that can cause major problems.
You know, it's kind of crazy because I've heard and I've read things in the past about weaponizing insects, weaponizing mosquitoes, having malaria charged mosquitoes, dropping mosquitoes in a certain area, then all those people get malaria or whatever. I mean, it's crazy to think stuff like that. We just heard about murder hornets again, supposedly. So it's crazy to me. This is obviously an evil being that we don't want to mess with. Hopefully no one will help it escape or weaponize it against us, because this sounds like a bad thing. The Bone Hive, this is bad.
Yeah, it is more or less, because it only hits humans. It doesn't go for anything else. They have tried it with other things. They will not harm anything but humans. So more or less, it could have been a subatomical particle effect that was manually hit against mankind. And it doesn't need to be set outwards. It needs to be set and boxed in where it's at, not spread out.
Crazy. And this other one here, this SCP-450. Why should I be alarmed about an abandoned federal penitentiary? What is it? Am I missing it?
Well, think about certain beings through this complex pattern that the seismology points to. These beings are hostile. They're spectral entities. Now we go on TV and we watch how these ghost people, they go out to similar events and they take photographs and they take videos because they hear about spirits and they causing issues in similar areas, whether it's a penitentiary or whether it's somewhere else. Penitentiaries hold very, very high amounts of electromagnetic discharge. Because of the electromagnetic discharge, certain areas have more of a higher vortex stream because of the paranormal indexer. If we are calibrating at such an event that humans or other entities were on a negative stand with there, it can create a portal. And that portal could cause these entities to become more mean and more aggressive towards the holograms itself in that area.
It's hard for me to grasp. I do remember from 34 when we talked about the Leviathan, and that being's obviously not one that can be contained. You can't contain a federal penitentiary, but you can keep people away, much like the Leviathan. Is that's the
Yes.
thing here?
Yes. That's one of the things that they would they would have signs up. They would have 1 or 2 guards around the perimeter because they're looking out for mankind's safety. Those areas are more paranormal and more unknown to the public. And because of that, it can pose a threat to the public because of the amount of the amount of security that should be there isn't there. So they have to subsidize the programming speeds and make sure that that area is not attuned to everybody.
What's this last one you have here? SCP-473.
Rex Spanish Galleon, a ship, if you will. It was used in the early 16th century, resting on the ocean for, I'm not allowed to give the perimeters, I'm sure it's closer to the Pacific Standard waves. And a loss of a research vessel, coordination zone, so they have a lot of paranormal activity there, including 2 to 3 programming speeds of 1 to English, 1 to Spanish, and an unrecognized language. So Scimetrics, they were hearing giggling, and when they were searching, they couldn't find the lost crew. The vessel supposedly was lost. Designated anomalies, maybe due to cargo within the wreck, so it stuck anomalies because of the wreckage. And believe it or not, when a set soul is stuck on perimeter because of what happened, because of their hologram, a certain part of that soul will stay stuck to that timeline itself, that interval itself, and re-replicate as a spirit processing scene. It's not the full soul. It's just a signalized event that because it's reformed into another timeline and is pushing into that timeline. Think about a paranormal or paradox effect that could calculate between 2 indexer speeds. That itself further investigates the problem at hand. Because it was uptuned to a different timeline speed, there were paranormal shifts around that area. Closer to what Titanic was in the submarine there and what happened. You know, they used negative particleized events there. And there's an electromagnetic interference as well as the subsidized structures of events as well as the electromagnetic interferences that happened there. It's close to this because it projects more of a paranormal scene.
You know, for as vast as the ocean is, we know, and we've talked about it in past shows, about ley lines and about electromagnetic fields and energy areas and so forth. And then you take a look, and for those of you who don't know, we both do this show from Florida and USA. Right off our coast in Florida is the Bermuda Triangle, the Devil's Triangle, whatever you want to call that. And there's a high area of electromagnetic activity there. And this goes way back to planes missing, whole fleets of planes missing, ships going missing and everything else, time adjustments, somebody traveling 100 miles through the Bermuda Triangle in 3 minutes. I mean, it's amazing stuff that you can hear. And I'm sure if you're watching this, you're aware of that. But if not, go check it out. If you're a bit younger than me, go look it up. Go Google the Devil's Triangle, the Bermuda Triangle. Is this a similar situation with the SCP-473 that whole area is like an electromagnetic field that caused a failure here?
Well, it's a little bit different because it has paranormal entities there. And the Titanic has paranormal entities too because there were lost lives. But there was electromagnetic disturbance field around there. Around this perimeter, they are feeling and recognizing that there are unknown voices upon the perimeters between English and Spanish. Something else has self-activation underneath. So it could open up to some type of timeline portal. It is a little bit different.
And the thing that doesn't shock me is, and we've talked about this in the past, we all know that the Earth is approximately 2/3 covered by water. There could be extraterrestrial civilizations right out in the open in the ocean, and that's why we see USOs or UAPs as they're trying to call them now, or like you had mentioned in the beginning of the show with Agartha. Do you think that any of these SCP things that we're talking about are related to Agartha and some other topics we've talked about in recent shows?
Yes, absolutely. Because Agartha runs into the paranormal scenes in the interdimensions itself. And the redox forms through some of these events come from that channeling.
Now, if you're a first-time watcher, first-time listener, you might be going, Agartha, what's that? I'm going to save you the Google power. Just look at our videos, and you can find an index of topics in each one of our videos. So you can literally search through a video and go, oh, I like that topic. Oh, that one interests me. And it'll take you right to the topic during our show. So if we talk about something and I say, oh, yeah, we've talked about it in the past, by all means, look up that show and you can find it instantaneously. You don't have to listen to the whole show of stuff you might not be interested in. Although I know you're interested in the whole show. What's next on our list here? What's soul matter, crystalline levels I see here?
The 5 planes of existence and the fractals of the codes itself. Codes initiate with spark gaps, fractal sequencing events that could analyze through the circuit codes between one's 4 fingers. What I am saying is, we all bear some type of energetic code of event with our hands, and seismology can polarize into hyperlight wavelengths. And because of that, it can manipulate the certain substructures in the higher elementals. Now think about closer to static electricity and how when you touch a balloon after you rub it, you get that static. Now think about putting 2 fingers together and actually electromagnetically defining the static within. We all have electromagnetic static frequencies within our ingrading system, and those polarity lines substructure to the elementals itself. Subsidizing what the hologram actually coordinates with.
Wow.
With that, it programs through different types of dimensions that go into the inertial wavelengths. With the bioelementals and the signature streams, it also runs into the correlated last 5th dimensional wavelength itself, the soul, the spirit.
So this has to do with
fire.
This has to do with the chakra and all these things I've heard of in the past, but I don't totally understand. Maybe you could break it down a little further for us with the chakra and the crystal.
It's much deeper. That's much deeper than the chakra. What I am stabilizing that there are certain electromagnetic fields that the programming speeds of the hands can play out in vital roles, and it could manually manipulate the light structure of the electromagnetic fields itself in priority stream. It creates a spark gap. The spark gap of the inertial gap itself sparks up the electromagnetic fields in the engram system. And it creates a more incombined correlated current stream. That current stream will bring a better program for the inertial hologram. So when you learn to use your your electromagnetic field that your ether form can distribute and elevate through that program speeds, you're going to be able to learn to use your abilities more, and as well as your psyche awareness. It is opening up on higher levels, as well as the electromagnetic fields that are defined within your hologram. We all have static electromagnetic fields. That is part of what that is playing outwards.
In one of our early shows, you had talked about something about healing with the hands or with light or something. Is that the same thing?
Yes, it can use a similar event like what pastors and others deal with. Those that can use magic, if you will, too. Magicians. They're using a certain electromagnetic field that sparks in tune into their balancing stream that can correlate through their psyche awareness, depending. There are healers that can use it. There are ones that use it with magic. There are ones that use it with electromagnetic fields. There are ones that, like us, that can manipulate the electromagnetic field in frequencies like technopaths, as well as the elements itself. And there is resurgence events of being able to manually open up the inner psyche. This is real. People look it up. Healers are real. I mean, you're even going to Native American Indians that have used the healing. And like I had said from a pre-past show, where did they even get that from? They got it from the star gods. They learned that from that.
For some reason, I'm one of those people that I'm convinced I give off some sort of frequency that affects electronics. Like computers sometimes don't work right with me. Phones don't work right with me sometimes. Not all the time, but just sometimes. Is that me just not of having this connectivity, but not being aware yet, or not being aware of how to utilize it yet?
You have a higher energetic field of effect, and because of that, you're able to program the speeds around you. Remember, spirits themselves can control the electromagnetic fields. That's why they have people who search that out. Now, This goes through the same similar events as humans. That's why you're able to astral project. That's why they stated, look it up. People will be able to affect things around them, even with their soul projecting to another coordination zone. Higher elevation through the self-awareness.
Wow, it sounds like another whole show. I'm sure it doesn't sound like we're running out of material anytime soon, so that's awesome. Hey, anything to report from the Federation and the Space Force?
Yep, absolutely. Soros, George Soros. Now, he and the coordination events of what's going on, he gave it over to his son just recently. Now, Donald Trump and others got an issue against that because there's one main negative coordinator. And these top leading programming speeds, I would look into. I would look real good into. Because the narratives that run in through with the father itself had supposedly caused an insurgence event and correlating negative programming speeds from one place to another. Thousands of Central American migrants. Without the evidence and forthwith. There is an Open Society Foundation group that Soros plays with. And that society, we need to dig in deeper, elevates that the foundations and funding that they're politicizing are not going on good standards.
Well, it's heavy. That's deep stuff there.
Absolutely. And we're also talking about with who? CDC, Deep State, crop dismantling, scenes of effect. Also the agenda. Pay attention to what they're doing with construction right now. Pay attention because there's certain areas and even a bridge just by where I'm at. I and others have paid attention to what they are doing. Cutting into these leveling effects. Dismantling the ingrading system. Prioritize this. Pay attention. Not many groups are good. There are negative groups upon impasse. And as well as do not get fruits and vegetables and just pick them up willy-nilly. Pay attention to the ones you grab because many people now, because of the crop dismantling and what they are doing, and that they are in bioengineering these groups of fruits and vegetables now. 2 days later, if someone buys a watermelon, 2 days later, they went to open it up and it's like an inflated ball. There's nothing in it. It was completely flat. I should have took a picture, and this is from my own. I'm vegan as a higher being. Yams, sweet potatoes, they are changing the differences on them. Genetics now, they're supposed to be an orange yellow, right? Well, the one I opened up looked just like a regular potato, but was a sweet potato. They are screwing up the plants and the vegetables in this planet. And it is reaching into the state of Florida.
Crazy.
Do your facts, people.
We talked about that on a previous show, too, with Bill Gates and having a unique partnership with China. And what people don't realize is people think, well, our farmers aren't selling the land, at these exorbitant prices to foreign entities. It's just like the thing with the money laundering thing, folks. It's through a company that's owned by a company that's owned by a company that's owned by the CCP. That's how they do it. These places are near military installations. These places they can totally control our food. I have a sister, or I should say a brother, show to our show here. And I'll just go ahead and say it out here. Right Side Mike. And I just put up a link on that Facebook page there. It'll send you to a short video. It's about 20 minutes long. And you will be floored. You'll be shocked by what this thing tells you. It tells you all that we're talking about here about Bill Gates and China and our food supply and all these things. So please go seek that out. I'll share it to the to your page here, Blue, so people can take a look at that. It's just crazy to think that we are letting this happen. If you and I are talking about it, there's a lot of people that already know about this. And the thing that kills me the most and bothers me the most when I talk about situations like that is people go, doesn't affect me. Come on. If I want something to eat, I go to the store. Folks, those days are going to be overnight. And you're going to be shocked and you're going to go, well, I didn't. And what? These are the things we're talking about, folks. Things that Blue and I have been talking about a long time ago. People are starting to become more aware of. And this is why I'm doing this show. This is why I'm glad Blue's doing this to make us more aware of these things. Blue, I apologize. I'm taking up all our time here. Let's get right into ET of the week.
Yes, the Gomorrah Goliath, interbred species between the Goliath carp and the ancient giant land beast. These climatic impacts that cause crevices upon certain riverbeds and inner land streams create a foundation for these beings to come out. Otherwise, they are very rare to come upon, and yes, certain people have fished and been able to catch these species before, but they are more paranormal, and they actually run through the ancient giant lands. So there are different types of aquatics that are hybrids of the ancient civilizations of old, but still exist here now, ranging from 45 feet to 248 feet in length. Carnivorous, acceptable to vast amounts of eating, and may attack. So they can attack. I mean, they won't automatically just try to go for you like a piranha, but they will attack if they feel threatened. This type of Goliath is a Goliath fish. There are fishes that are called Goliath. And this is an ancient species in a biomech sequencing data speed. That brings that into what that replicates and one of the inner lands itself. So it's an actual hybrid.
Wow.
Think about Chernobyl itself. Think about how that hybridization came about because certain things came into play. Well, there are aquatics that come in from certain tunnel systems or riverbeds and that have holes that go right into the inner worlds itself, or actual tunnels. This is one of it.
You know, and that's a great point because we've talked about that with Agartha, with tunnels, with holes, and all those things on past shows, folks. So whenever you hear us casually mentioning these things, sometimes we take it for granted that, you know, maybe we think everybody's watched all the shows, or maybe we think everybody knows everything we're talking about. And I know that's not true. And we learn something new every day, both of us here. But the thing about it is if you hear something on one of our shows, again, go back to one of the previous shows and you can look up through the indexing. You can look up exactly the topics we're talking about here. So when I reference, go back and check episode 34 and look at this. You go right to the video, you go right to the audio page, and you look up that topic and you hit the timestamp right next to that topic, and it'll bring you right there. So we have a complete library by now of just about all the things we talked about. It's a wonderful place to be. Blue, just like that, we're out of time again. Fascinating show. Awesome stuff once again. Folks, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And Blue.
One more thing, Mike.
Oh, yeah.
One more thing.
Yeah.
We want to talk about what they recently found in Mexico. The ET.
By all means, yes.
Yes. Now think about the movie ET itself. This being looks almost exactly like that being in the movie ET. Maybe that they are polarizing something that has been in document for quite a while outwards. Yes, these types of higher beings could come from tunnelization systems or in coordinates to central Mexico, or wherever they were polarized at, close into coordinates. You got to think about Nevada. You got to think about the desert regions. They have in documentation these certain types of species that have been around for many, many, many years. This is proof to one of it.
You know, it's crazy stuff too, because I'm convinced that through familiarization, in other words, you're more apt to go to a place to eat called Mom's Restaurant than Bob's Restaurant, because, well, you know, we have that warmth, we have that home style feel of a mom's type thing. Well, when you see this being, it registers automatically with that movie, just like you said. So it's almost like the movies are precursors and making it a softer hit to us, so disclosure doesn't hit us as hard. See, it's a nice, friendly, gentle looking being here. You've seen this being before, maybe. And our world leaders wouldn't do this. Our leaders here in this country wouldn't do this. Maybe they're taking some factual information, dripping out some factual information, and then going to
little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
Yes, and little bits and pieces. That's what I'm stating.
And then they're going to explode it and use it to their advantage, obviously, I think. I mean, I don't see why they would just share information with us. Oh, yeah, by the way, this happened a while back. We wanted to make sure everybody knew. Stop. Blue, again, wonderful stuff here. Great show today, episode 34. Folks, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And Blue, I'm sorry, did I say 34? It was 35. You had 35 shows. Congratulations. That's a milestone for you. I look forward to 36.
Yep. Thank you, Mike.